Go ahead and call the meeting to order of the Planning and Zoning Commission on October 3rd, 2022. Roll call, all commissioners here outside of Commissioner Eisenberg. It's 6:30, by the way, 6:30. Introduction of agenda and format of the hearing. Go to item number 4, consent agenda. Consideration possible action, excuse the absence. Introduction of agenda and format of the hearing. I apologize. I'm just rolling through this. Sorry. Right ahead.
It's all good, man.
Martin.
So for each item on tonight, we'll have a call to order followed by a staff report. Then the applicant will have their opportunity to present their project. Afterward, the public has their opportunity to state their comments in support or opposition. At that time, please state your name and address for the record. Be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame. And all comments shall be about the project with no personal attacks. Then commission and staff will have their discussion. The commission will vote to recommend approval as presented, approval with conditions, denial of the request, or to table the items. And then the zone change and conditional use permit cases, which are heard, will go to the October 24th meeting. So on the agenda tonight, y'all have approval of minutes. And then you have a variance for a cul-de-sac, a preliminary plat for Whispering Oaks, and then a variance for the maximum lot depth to width ratio for a property on Adamo Lane, followed by 2 zone cases, the first of which is on O'Day Road next to the New McCard Road to go from the R1 and Garden O'Day mixed use district to the R3 district, and then a zone change request for property on Smith Ranch Road to go from BP 288 to a planned development. With that, I'll punt it back to you.
All right. We'll go back to where I left off since I got ahead. Consent agenda. Item A, consideration of possible action, excuse the absence of Commissioner Brandon Dansby from the September 19, 2022 meeting. And then, yes, and then also consideration possible action approval of the minutes from the same meeting, September 19, 2022. Do I have a motion? And is there any item that would like to be pulled from there? Is there anything on those 2 items that would like to be pulled from the consent agenda? Hearing none. All right. Do I have a motion?
Commissioner Earl, so move.
I have a second.
Commissioner McCatherine, I second.
All right. Hearing a first and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Please raise your right hand. Or any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. All right. New item number 4. 4. Yes. Well, we did that. I'm sorry. Item 5, we did that. Item 6, new business. Consideration of possible actions. VARP 22-10 variance to allow a cul-de-sac that exceeds the maximum 600 foot in length. Legal description of subdivision, 9.563 acres of land situated in Warren D.C. Hall Survey, Abstract 70, City of Pearland, Missouri County, Texas. General location 3404 Dixie Farm Road, Pearland. We are going to have one of our commissioners step out, Commissioner Hendricks, for this item and the next item, item number 2 as well. For her to do so. And so we have item number 1 of new business. Do I hear a motion?
Commissioner Fuertes' motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Commissioner McCatherine, I second.
All right. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Florence Buaku to present this staff report. Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. The first item on the agenda is for a variance from Section 3.2.6.4, and this is to allow a cul-de-sac that exceeds the maximum 600 feet allowed in the UDC. The proposed cul-de-sac will be 662 feet, and the location is 3404 Dixie Farm Road, and the purpose is to develop a residential subdivision. So as you can see on your screen, the property is zoned single-family residential 1, and it supports the proposed single-family subdivision. The future land use is low-density residential, which supports the proposed use. It's surrounded by a mix of low and medium-density residential properties. What you have on your screen is the proposed cul-de-sac. The purpose of the extension is to allow a group of trees to be preserved in the middle of the cul-de-sac, and so that forced the extension of that cul-de-sac. It is shown in green on the screen, and that would provide access to 11 lots within the subdivision. So this is a view of the trees that will be preserved as a result of this variance. It would allow a landscape reserve to be created in the middle of that cul-de-sac. Staff has reviewed the request based on criteria outlined in the Unified Development Code and has determined that this request meets all the criteria. And based on that, staff is recommending approval of the proposed variance. This would allow the mature trees to be preserved. Thank you, and that ends staff report.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have the applicant here for presentation? Yes, sir. You'll step to the microphone in the back, introduce yourself. Just give your name and address.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Rene Rodriguez with LJ Engineering, 3600 West Sam Houston Parkway. The proposed single-family development of Old Spring Oaks consists of 9.563 acres of land with 11 lots, 2 reserves, 1 block. The site is located along Dixie Farm Road, south of Broadway and north of Marys Creek. A variance is being requested to address the maximum 600-foot length requirement of the cul-de-sac established under sections 3.264L of the Unified Development Code, and to allow a street length of approximately 662 feet along the proposed cul-de-sac extending from Dixie Farm Road within the proposed subdivision. Extending the cul-de-sac will prevent from the removal of the existing trees and preserves the existing green space. The additional 62 feet will not hinder the construction of sidewalks nor impede pedestrian traffic within the subdivision. The occurrence of large amount of traffic along the streets, which lots fronts, would be unlikely, as lots within the subdivision do not front on any through streets or major streets. Chair, if you please, if it pleases the Commission, we respectfully request that you approve the requested variance and approve the plat per the conditions. If there are any questions, I can answer those at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, sir.
This time? Thank you. Do we have any persons wishing to speak for or against this request at this time? Going once, going twice, hearing none, seeing none. All right. Staff and commissioners application discussion. Does anyone have anything else to add? Staff or commission? All right. And so we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you, sir. Item number 2, Commissioner Hendricks is still out of the room, so we'll move forward. Consideration possible action, Plat 22-80, preliminary plat of Whispering Oaks, Section 1. A request by Patrick Lane, LJA Engineering, applicant on behalf of Jack Enterprises, LLC, owner, for the approval of the preliminary plat of Whispering Oaks, Section 1, creating 11 single-family lots, 2 reserves, and 1 block on plus or minus 9.563 acres of land located along Dixie Farm. General locations 3404 Dixie Farm Road, Pearland. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Commissioner Fuertes, I'll second that motion.
We have a first and a second. Staff report?
Martin, if you don't mind me jumping in, I'd just say that this would have been on your consent agenda. However, because of sequencing and the variance having to be done first, it had to be placed on new business. Did I get that right?
That is correct.
So if you want a full staff report, we're happy to provide that. Same project as the one before. Otherwise, if you just like to ask the applicant if they want to present, if they don't, that's fine, and move on to public comments, you're welcome to do so.
Okay. Any of the commissioners want to hear again from staff regarding the same project previously discussed? No? All right. Applicant, if you'd like to give an additional presentation, you're able to at this time? No, you're good? Okay. All right. All right. So we have anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against the second of this item, the plat 22-80. Hearing none, seeing none, going once, going twice. All right. We have any further discussion on commissioners and staff at this time? All right. Hearing none, seeing none, we have a first and a second for approval. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Yes. Martin will do so. Wait just a second to let Ms. Hendricks back in. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Thank you. All right. Item number 3, consideration possible actions, VARP 22-08, variance to allow the platting of a lot that exceeds the maximum 3-to-1 lot depth to lot width ratio. A request by Donna Eccles, ProServe, applicant on behalf of 2V Dang and Lan T. Dang, owners, for approval of a variance permitted in section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code, ordinance number 2000-T, from sections 3.2.14.2 to allow the creation of a lot exceeds the maximum 3-to-1 lot depth to lot width ratio described to wit. General location 1815 Adamo Lane, Pearland. Do I have a motion?
Commissioner Fuertes, motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Henrik, second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Staff report, please.
Once again, let me introduce Florence to provide the staff report. Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. This request is for a variance from section 3.2.14.2 to allow the creation of a lot that exceeds the maximum 3-to-1 lot depth to lot width ratio. The proposed lot depth to lot width would be 3.6-to-1 instead of the required 3-to-1. The location is 1815 Adamo Lane, and it's proposed for the development of a single-family residential home.
Real quick, what's the address again? Just make sure that's at ALDAMO, and the agenda says ADAMO. If you go back one, it looks like Adamo, just a typo on the first page, previous page. Yeah. General location.
It's ADAMO.
Okay. Thank you. Just clarifying.
Thank you. The property is zoned suburban residential 12, and it does allow the proposed use. The underlying future land use is suburban residential, which also supports the proposed use, and it's surrounded by similar future land use designations. So this is the proposed plat. This property was subdivided by meets and bounds multiple times between 2007 and 2018. This plat would be, the meets and bounds description created 5 lots, but this plat is proposed for 2 of those 5 lots. The rest of the plats would come in later when they come for development, and staff has determined that the lot to width ratio should not affect the development of the lot. So staff has reviewed the request based on the criteria outlined in the Unified Development Code and has determined that it meets all the criteria. And so based on that, staff is recommending approval of the requested variance to allow this property to be properly platted and developed. Thank you, and that concludes staff report.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the applicant here for a presentation or questions? You'll just... Okay. Yeah, if you wouldn't, sorry, Donna, if you wouldn't mind, just go to the mic. It can't pick up the recording, just in case. If you'll just give your name and address one more time. Thank you.
Donna Eccles with ProServe here in case there's questions. We appreciate staff's recommending approval.
All right, great. Thank you. Is there anyone here wishing to speak for or against this item as presented? Going once, going twice, hearing none, seeing none, we'll move on. Any further discussion from staff or the commissioners?
Just something real quick. Mr. Martin Griggs and I were speaking before the meeting. I would like to make some sort of recommendation in the future, maybe amendments to the UDC that Planning Zoning Commission hears these cases of the lot width, the depth ratio, and perhaps we can do what we talked about in the fencing. I think it was the fencing where we said the you specified the language, Mr. Provins, about the city manager or his designee could handle these, perhaps, as an internal decision, and we could maybe then, with a positive vote, we could maybe just have these on the consent agenda or something like that, if we even hear them at all. Just a suggestion for next time. I have no problem with this one.
And just to respond to that, we are working on going into a UDC rewrite, roundup, change, alteration, amendments. So that's definitely something that we'll have on the table. So,
yeah, I'd generally say this is the flavor, or whatever you want to call it, of the original use has not changed. So I would be okay with this being in a consent agenda item, unless, and with the ability, obviously, to pull it out at any point in time somebody deems it necessary for one reason or another. So I agree. All right. After that, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion at this time. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. 6-0. Sorry. Can't count bankers, So, number 4 on the agenda, consideration possible action zone change application. Zone 22-23, request by Sharon Herrera, applicant on behalf of Tech Pro Estates, LLC, Owner for approval of a zone change for approximately 15.80 acres of land from the Garden O'Day mixed-use district and single-family residential R1 district to single-family residential R3 district, to wit, general location being northwest quadrant of O'Day and the new McCard Road, up and coming new McCard Road. Do I have a motion for approval?
Commissioner McCatherine, I would move for approval.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Staff report?
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Mohammed Barima to present the staff report. Mohammed, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Chairman, members of the Commission, good evening. Zone change 22-23 is a request for approval of a zone change for approximately 15.5 acres of land from the Garden O'Day mixed-use district and single-family residential R1 district to single-family residential 3 district. This subject property is located at the northwest quadrant of O'Day Road and the new McCart Road, and it is currently undeveloped. Staff has received one phone call in opposition to this request, and the intent of the applicant basically is just to rezone the property to accommodate the development of a residential subdivision. As you can see from the zoning map, this property is split into R1, which is the yellow area, and the Garden O'Day mixed use, which is the gray area to the right. So what they're trying to do is consolidate those 2 zoning districts into just one zoning district. That would be the R3. And the R3 basically is just a little bit denser than the R1. But the Garden O'Day mixed use district also does allow residential uses. However, the standard are the same of the R3. This is the future land use plan, and the property is designated on the future land use plan. Again, it's a split between the low density residential and the hatched area. The heavily hatched area is also Garden O'Day mixed use district. And to just kind of give you an idea, the Garden O'Day mixed use district is an area or a zone that was created with the comp plan back in 2015 to basically accommodate the hybrid nature of that area, which had previously commercial and residential uses in the past. This is an aerial map, and it basically shows the subject property within the yellow rectangle. It is surrounded by undeveloped land to the north. There's one single residential lot to the northeast. Across the street from O'Day, there's a residential subdivision. And on the south side, a church. And to the west, there's a machine shop located on the west side. As you can see, the area with the red lines, that's the future McCart Road, which is supposedly opening by the end of this year. That's at least the timeline for it. Now moving to some street views. This is a view of that property from O'Day Road. So the property is the one that's it's the behind the street, and it is this wooded area. It's very heavily wooded. Well, I should say it's heavily vegetated, not necessarily a huge wood. And again, this is another view from O'Day Road. The property would be to the left side of the street. These are the adopted city plans, and in staff's review of these adopted plans, the proposed zone change to R3 conforms to all of these adopted plan, comp plan, future land use plan, thoroughfare plan, and the utility plan. These are the zone change criteria from the UDC. The proposed zone change to R3 is consistent with all of these approval criteria, again, including the adopted comp plan and the future land use plan, and as well as meeting the standard for consistent with the surrounding area for that proposed zone change. And moving to staff recommendation, again, the proposed zone change meets the approval criteria consistent with the comp plan and the future land use plan, and therefore staff recommends approval to R3. And that concludes the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Do we have the applicant here for their presentation as well? Please. Yes, sir. You'll step to the microphone, just state your name and let us know what's on your mind.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shiran Pereira from MS2R Engineering. I didn't have a presentation today for this project, but I'm here if anybody has a question. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Are there any persons wishing to speak for or against this request? All right. Hearing none, seeing none. We're to staff and commissioner discussion. Do we have any commissioners have any questions or want to discuss? I just quickly, can you said this is, Mohammed, you said this was the same zoning as R1 and the current, I guess the gray area is the same. What would Garden O'Day mixed use and R3 be comparable to? I mean, what kind of products?
So correct. So as you can see, that gray area is zoned a Garden O'Day mixed use district. The Garden O'Day mixed use district allow both residential and non-residential. When it's developed for residential, then it would have to comply with the R3 zoning standards, which is similar to exactly what they're proposing here, which is the R3. So basically, they're just trying to consolidate it and make it just cleaner. Obviously, the R1 has different zoning standard, which is minimum lot area of 8,800 square feet. The R3 would have 6,000 square feet lots.
What would you say across the street, that Rice Road? I can't remember the name of that neighborhood. I'm very familiar with it. I just lost it.
Yes. So that is also in the Garden O'Day mixed use zone district, and it was developed in accordance with the zoning district regulations, which is basically minimum lot size of 6,000 square. So it would be identical to what would be done across.
So that's a comparable product across the street.
Right.
Which is my point exactly. I don't have an issue with this one. Again, I think there's, if we panned out a little bit, there's more neighborhoods to the south. Garden O'Day was, I thought it was much older than 2015, the designation. I thought it was 2005 or 7 when we redid the plans back then. And what I recall about it is, we throwing blanket, this whole area is going to be R3 or, what have you, in an area that had industrial uses, and they were great neighbors with the existing residential, and there was no reason for us to change rules or make things grandfathered in. And then, in the event of a weather event, of a catastrophic event, these people couldn't restart their business or homes, if they were out of the zone. So we came up with this zone, staff did, and the planning and zoning weighed in on it. I actually wish we would expand this Garden O'Day to maybe Roy Road next to it and maybe another street over it. It's got its own character, and I think this fits in with that. So with that said, I'll be for it.
Is it Gardner or O'Day that's designated a through street future? I can't remember which one. One of them is.
Actually, both. So that area is designated as Garden O'Day mixed use zone district, and also as a future land use designation.
There you go. Okay, I figured that. So When my card goes in, this stuff's going to blow up, or when it gets finished, opened.
Correct.
All right.
Chair Dansby, were you talking about the thoroughfare plan, though?
Thank you. Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Well, and the thoroughfare plan says that I may be mixing up your extensions, but Reed is the one that goes all the way up to the
Reed. Okay. Oh, 1120.
I think Garden is the major collector, and O'Day, or portions of O'Day, are a secondary thoroughfare. That sound right, Parviz?
O'Day is a major collector from McCart to the north. From McCart to the south is a secondary thoroughfare, and Garden is completely major collector.
Major. Yeah. Collector. Okay.
Major collector.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion at this time? All right. All those approved, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. Okay. On this next item, Commissioner Fuertes and I have to step out. We're leaving you in great hands for the moment. And just give us a few minutes.
Item 5, consideration and possible action, zone change application, zone 22-24. This is a request by Alan Mueller, applicant, on behalf of Alamus Property LTD and TLR Investments LLC owners for approval of a zone change for approximately 16.18 acres of land from Business Park 288 District to Planned Development District to WIT. And the general location of this property is the east side of Smith Ranch Road, south of Smith Ranch 1 Road, and north of Hickory Slough. Can I get a motion for approval concerning this item?
Commissioner Hendricks, approve the item.
Commissioner Earls, a second.
Can I please get a staff report?
Thank you, Commissioner Boswell. Let me introduce Mohammed, and then I will pop in towards the end on this item. Mohammed, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Commissioner Boswell. This zone change 22-24 is a zone change for approximately 16.1 acres of land from the Business Park 288 District to Planned Development District to accommodate multifamily development on with base zoning for BP district, and as well as office and business component with the base zoning for Business Park district. The multifamily will have a base zoning district for MF. The location is on the south, on the east side of Smith Ranch Road, south of Smith Ranch Road 1, and north of the Hickory Slough. Staff has received at least 2 letters. One letter that is from the property owner to the east, expressing some concerns and issues, and they may be here in the meeting to discuss those issues. That's the owner to the east. And we also received 1 letter of recommendation or approval from, I believe, a property owner to the north. And we also did receive a few phone calls for additional information on it from the property owner to the east as well. So moving on to the zoning map, and you can see this property is located within the Business Park District 288. Again, as I mentioned, it's 16.8 acres. This is the future land use plan, and the property is designated within the 288 gateway, which is intended to accommodate high quality medical and office uses, and with medical and office uses with residential that is vertically integrated into the buildings. And this is an aerial map that shows the property abutted by undeveloped land from the north and from the west. There is a residential property to the east and an undeveloped land to the south. And this is a view of the subject property, and you can see the property is located along Smith Ranch Road. Again, not to confuse you, there's 3 Smith Ranch Roads. There's Smith Ranch Road, the main one that goes north and south, and there's Smith Ranch Road 1 to the north of the subject property, and there's a Smith Ranch Road 2 to the south. I may just have to go back to this slide here, and to just to point that the street that's on the west side of the property, that's Smith Ranch Road, and to the north there's Smith Ranch Road 1, and to the south Smith Ranch Road 2, and that's where the future Wooden Road would be extended and connected to Wooden Road, which doesn't show up on the slide here, but eventually Smith Ranch Road 2 would become a future extension of Wooden Road. That Wooden Road comes from Broadway and goes all the way to the frontage road of 288. This is the proposed PD design plan. Again, it has 2 base zoning districts. The multifamily district, which is shown with kind of orange, it's the larger area. And it's intended to accommodate up to 330 multifamily units. And then you have the light red or pink area, that is the BB district. And these 2 pad sites will be fronting towards Smith Ranch Road. And it's intended to accommodate future commercial development of up to, according to the applicant proposal, up to 24,000 square feet of building. There's no clarity on how much of square footage they would like to build there, but it's up to 24. That's how it's described. This is the proposed landscape plan. Again, it shows the proposed green spaces within this development. There's green space within the courtyards. Again, this is kind of what is supposed to be an urban style apartments. And so they do have the dark gray area in the plan. That's the garage, and it's wrapped up with these multifamily units. And they have internal courtyards. These internal courtyards, they're shown to be green space here, but they also will accommodate additional residence amenities. Some of it may be hardscape, so like swimming pools and things like that. The next slide is the fencing plan, and it shows that they're proposing to add a wrought iron fence along the south side of the property, along Smith Ranch Road 2, or the future Wooden Road, as well as the west side of the property. That would be the property line that separates the multifamily from the commercial pad sites. And they also propose to have a wooden fence along the east and north property lines, and as well as a chain link fence around the detention pond. So remember, this PD has 2 sides. The actual buildings and will be on the north side of Smith Ranch Road 2, or the future Wooden Road, and the detention pond will be on the south side of Smith Ranch Road 2. So it's the dark gray area. The applicant is intending to fence that off with a chain link fence. These are renderings provided by the applicant for what they intend to do. Again, as indicated on the PD, these are depictions, and they're just intending to convey intent, but not necessarily substantial conformance. So that's how they have it there. They do have some standard for how much of masonry that they will be providing on the multi-family buildings as well as the commercial buildings. But the illustrations that you see here is just depictions and not intended to be the exact type of buildings that they propose to build. These are the deviations from the UDC they're asking for. The biggest ones here are number one is the building height. The current UDC regulations for multifamily require maximum height of 35 feet. The deviation here is for 60 feet, obviously to accommodate multi-story. I think it's 4-story apartment building. And another deviation is residential density. The UDC, the multifamily district, would allow up to 16 units per acre. Here, the proposal is almost 36, so it's double 36 units per acre, and with some other deviations for open space. This is, again, a continuation for deviations from the UDC, including deviations for entry gate along Smith Ranch Road 2, to have a control access gate, and some other detention-related deviations. This is the criteria for establishing a PD from the Unified Development Code. So the Unified Development Code establishes criteria for actually applying and approving a new PD. And staff looking at those different criteria, there are 8 criteria. We found that this proposed PD fits into one, actually criteria number 3, as you can see here from the screen. And that's when your proposed development is for mixed-use development or a traditional neighborhood development. So staff felt this development meets the intent of that mixed-use development, even though it's a horizontal integration, not vertical integration, and with also the style of apartment they're or multifamily they're proposing, which is the internal access units as opposed to the garden style. So their proposal mirrored some of that would fit into that criteria. Next slide is conformity to the adopted plans by the city: comp plan, future land use plan, thoroughfare plan. The proposal actually do meet these 2 criteria for the comp plan and the future land use plan, as well as the thoroughfare plan. As far as utilities, the city staff still continue to work with the applicant on several things with regarding to utilities and with regard to infrastructure, and the hope that these issues will be hashed out and before the project goes to city council within 3 weeks. So that's why you see it's yellow, it's not green, because we're still working on a few things. And we have the city engineer here who can talk a little bit about that. These are the approval criteria for plan development, and then this is from the Unified Development Code. So the Unified Development Code established criteria for approval in this, and the staff looked at those criteria and found that this PD conforms to at least 5 of these criteria, and they don't conform to the last 2, which is, again, I mentioned the utilities, so that's number 6, and open space and recreational amenities. They don't meet that because, and we're going to discuss that in a little bit, because the way they proposed the amenities for the PD, there was just not enough clarity for staff with regard, because they had a list of amenities that they feel they will like to choose from, which we felt like it's still not clear and it's just very loose. And so we want them to tighten it and just give us a confirmation that they will have these particular amenities for the residents. So that's why we felt like this was not conforming to that last criteria. And with regard to, so staff still has a few issues, and Martin is going to go over those issues that we feel that still need to be addressed. And I'll turn it over to Martin, and you can go from here.
Thank you, Mohammed. So just to draw back on this is a project that we've been working on with the applicant through the workshop into the drafting of the plan development, and have gotten a long way from where we originally were. This is a project that is on a strip of land that Smith Ranch Road does not have a lot of comparable developments in the area. So this is really setting the tone and establishing the character for future developments of the surrounding properties. So it's really important that we get the keys put in the right place for the development of this corridor. So with that said, the first thing that we really want to talk about is tightening up the language on the mix of the units within the development itself. So what I'm talking about is having a mixture of the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom styles of apartments within the multifamily portion of the development. Currently, they show 198 single-family or efficiency units. I think it's primarily in the single-family or single-bedroom configuration. I think there are only 8 units that are proposed as efficiency. Following through, if they are allowed up to 330 units, then they could have a maximum, keeping the same ratios of unit types. They could have a maximum of 214 single bedroom or efficiency. What staff is proposing is to have a cap of 70% of all units be in the single bedroom variety, and have no more than 3% be within the efficiency. Currently, I know 3% sounds like a really harsh number there, but with only having 8 in the 8 out of 198, it's really only about 2%. So the 3% that we're proposing is in line with what they are currently requesting. The second portion is the difference in the facade percentages for the north elevation. As I led off the discussion, this is going to set the character for this area. So really and truly, we need to imagine this development being visible from all 4 sides, recognizing that they are really concentrated on the west and south elevation. The north elevation is going to be just as visible from 288 for people traveling south on 288. Their proposal includes having fiber cement panels, and to have fiber cement panels within the 80% masonry requirement. We're proposing to allow the fiber cement panels within the 20% non-masonry portion of the facade, and then that the north facade should also be at the 80% masonry requirement instead of the 50% as proposed. The third point that is on the slide before you discusses restaurants with drive-in or drive-through. Nowhere within the BP district is a drive-through allowed, so it is not fitting with the remainder of the property to have a drive-through. So that is something that staff is not in favor of allowing. The fourth item is about the screening for the detention pond. This detention pond is off-site, so it's located just south of Smith Ranch Road 2, and will be across the way from the future Wooten Road. So Wooten, as you know, is a north-south road coming off of Broadway, and Wooten will eventually make a curve to join up with Smith Ranch Road number 2. So this will be a road that is eventually more heavily traveled, and having the screening on the screening for this detention be of a lesser quality, again, sets the character, sets the tone for the area. And we want this to be a higher standard, a higher quality development. So what we are recommending is an upgrade to the material to be a masonry, wrought iron, or a similarly designed material. So that way we keep the character of the area that we're developing. The fifth, as stated in the criteria for approval, the language that's in the plan development document for amenities isn't as specific as we would normally like for a plan development that gains Planning and Zoning Commission's approval to have. Typically, when we bring forward a plan development, it's very specific as to the quantity, the type, and the number of amenities that are being provided. And this uses some language that doesn't guarantee that all of the proposed amenities will be installed. It's more of a may be installed, and that the developer has the ability to pick and choose which amenities are developed. So we'd like for that language to be tightened up. And last, staff is concerned about the controlled access driveway along Smith Ranch number 2, as it does not meet the engineering design criteria manual for turnaround. And this can eventually cause issues with safe access and creating conflicts in the future when Wooten is a more established roadway and has some heavier traffic to it than what, of course, Smith Ranch number 2 has today. With all of that said, we are much closer to coming to agreements on a lot of these things than I'm sure my voice sounds like today. We just want to bring these things up to the Planning and Zoning Commission's attention and to get y'all's feedback and analysis on ensuring that these things that we've brought up are important to the character of the area and to the future development of the corridor. So based on what is proposed, once we get some clarification and have some agreements on the proposal, we're closer to recommending approval for it. But we still have some issues that need to be worked through before we can fully say that we are recommending approval of the PD as presented.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? And if so, would you like to give a presentation?
Good evening. Hold up. Can you flip this over, please? All right. Thank you. Good evening. Alan Mueller here this evening on behalf of the property owner, Masood Motamedi, as well as the multifamily developer, John Couture with City Street. And so we're going to run through this. A lot of this is going to be similar to what you've seen in the workshop that we had back in June, because I think we were pretty favorably received back in June. And so as far as the general content of the PD, it's almost exactly what you saw before, just with some enhancements that we've added since then based off of the comments that we received from that workshop, as well as from the staff comments that we've received in the meantime. So some of this will be a little bit redundant, but just to remind you, This is about 16 acres. Consists of 18 different parcels. So you have Mr. Modametti to thank for putting this all together. Otherwise, this could certainly be developed in some very piecemeal and not very quality development, which it actually was over the years. And so he's consolidated the property, removed a lot of the old structures that were there that have had become run down. And so, this area, is kind of the hole in the donut, as you can see from the exhibit there, and it really has suffered because, Smith Ranch Road was a poor road, very narrow, as well as there are no water and sewer utilities that are available directly to this tract. They are going to have to be extended to this tract to serve. So that's really been the challenges that have kept this from happening. And so the planned development that's being proposed, again, 4-story urban density residential development. As mentioned before, it has the parking deck and courtyards, as well as several internal amenities that we'll talk about here shortly. Amenity center, workout centers, business center, that type of facility. And then in the front, 2 commercial pads totaling about 5.5 acres. And the applicant is committing to build 6,000 square feet concurrently with the first section of the multifamily that's being built. As we talked about at the workshop, I know you all have been presented with a lot of projects in the past where things were going to be phased, and the good, the part that you did that was future never actually happened. And so we felt like in this particular application, it was very important to make sure that at least some of the commercial got started at the same time as the multifamily is getting started. It does fulfill the goals of the existing comprehensive plan, as well as the draft comprehensive plan, and has been noted, this really has the ability to serve as a catalyst for this area. And so if this does not go through, we're back to 18 separate parcels that are going to have to be reevaluated as to what they can do with those. As noted before, there's up to 330 residential units or what is proposed, with the mix that you see there on the screen between the 1-bedroom, the studio, the 2 and the 3-bedroom. Based off of similar projects that City Street has done, they generally generate about 0.03 students per unit. So very low student population. So with the total units here, we'd expect about 10 students. And we have talked with the superintendent at Pearland ISD to make sure that they are aware of this, but they certainly did not have any concerns with a student population in that range. Projected value for the multifamily component of about $57.5 million going in. And then the commercial tracts, again, expecting about 24 to 30,000 square feet at full built out, with a value of at least $10 million on the front. So I'm sorry for all the words on the screen, but enhancements from the June workshop, just so we have expanded the masonry coverage on both the commercial and the residential structures. So on the commercial buildings, we have the 80% masonry on 3 sides, the east side, the back side being the only side that's at 50% as opposed to 80%. And then on the residential, since it is set back further from the freeway, that's where we've proposed the 80% on the south, which would face Wooten Road, and to the west that would face 288, 50% on the remainder. And as you'll see in some exhibits later, even with 50% or less, you still have a very good looking product. In the permitted use table, we had already voluntarily removed several BP 288 uses from being allowed in this PD. So we removed an additional 6 that we had proposed in this version. Those were taken off the table. And so that we have done that. There were some concerns about the detention pond being remote the way it is in terms of access and safety. And so that's why we've proposed that fence around the detention pond to make sure that it's secure, with the fence being, the primary purpose for the fence being security. But we have also specified in the PD that along the Wooten frontage, that there would be a continuous shrub hedge along there to provide the screening along the Wooten side. We have provided a specific list of amenities in the PD, and just not to niggle with words, but it does say will, it does not say may in terms of the list that is in the PD. And so we'll go over that here shortly. We've also specified, there were some questions from the earlier version about was the developer going to do everything that they were responsible for in terms of following the city code for extending of utilities. And so we've tried to be very clear here that we're not asking for any variances in terms of extending the utilities. So the developer is responsible for extending the off-site water and sanitary sewer to the site, as well as improving Wooten Road adjacent to the site. Now in the UDC, when it's a collector like this, there is some cost sharing that happens. And so the developer is responsible for 22 feet width of the total width of Smith Ranch Road. So the only, I think, variance that we're talking about on the sanitary sewer side would be to allow a private on-site lift station because the sanitary sewer of where it's at doesn't have enough depth by the time you extend it to the property. This site cannot gravity feed to the existing lift station that's to the north. So all that we're asking is that this property be able to build a private lift station that would serve the 3 tracks as opposed to having to build a public lift station, which is a lot more bells and whistles and a lot bigger. We do know that the city staff as well as the EDC is looking at kind of a regional solution for utilities in this area that they told us about a couple of weeks ago. And so we are obviously willing to participate. If a regional solution does come up, we're more than willing to participate in that. But if that does not come together, again, we understand what our obligations are in terms of developing and extending utilities. As far as that secondary access that's on Wooten Road, we've added more conditions into the PD to try to make it as safe as possible. Again, this is for emergency access or resident access only. It is not for general visitors. There will be no keypad. The only way to get in would be with the clicker that a resident would have. So there's no keypad, and there'll be signage that says that it's specifically for emergency or resident access only. So we've got an exhibit that will show you about that as well. We've tried to be very clear in the PD. We've also confirmed and added an exhibit to the PD that the Wooten alignment as it goes east can be accommodated, which was important to make sure that that could still happen with this development. We've also been able to add an additional acre to the detention pond, which will help make things work a lot more efficiently since you saw this at the workshop. And then I said added several exhibits to hopefully make this as clear as possible. So a little bit about City Street Residential. I guess, John, do you want to say a few words about City Street? And then we just have some examples of properties.
Sure. My name is John Contreras. I'm with City Street Residential Partners. We are a smaller developer. We're based out of Houston. We're small by choice. We like to specialize in really special developments. We don't undertake a development unless there's a very compelling story to it. And that differentiates us from a lot of the larger developers out there. We've been around as either our current incarnation or our predecessor since 2000. And we have developed everything from high-end RV resorts to high-rise apartment development. Everything we do is high-end, and Domain at Smith Ranch will be no different. We think this is a wonderful opportunity. The proximity to the Med Center, which is just growing by leaps and bounds. They announced a new phase of the Med Center on 500 acres a few weeks ago. And those folks need a place to live. And Pearland is very attractive for a lot of reasons that y'all know. And this development being so close to 288 makes a lot of sense for that type of resident. Our plans evolve as we work on them. It's interesting. From the day I start my architects to work on the drawings to the time we're actually finished, that's about 3 years. And a lot can change in 3 years. And we want the ability to really make something special that reflects what our residents want. We are committed to doing a Class A development here. We're committed to doing it first class, just like everything else we do. We want this to be something that we're going to be proud of, and that the city of Pearland will be proud of, and that people will be eager to live at.
Thanks, John. Just a few more. We're almost there. Thank you for your patience. So just a few examples. Domain at City Center. They're at Beltway and I-10. You probably all know that. Domain at Kirby. Memorial Townhomes. Domain at Boulder Creek, which is up here on Pearland Parkway at the Beltway. Eldridge, high-rise tower on Allen Parkway, and then projects at the Mueller Airport, no relation, redevelopment in Austin. So just to kind of respond to the staff concerns that were presented, obviously we're in favor of the PD as proposed. That's the reason we wrote it the way we did. But just to run through a few of those, the first one, and then we have a couple of slides to follow up as well. But on the putting the kind of the guardrails on the percentages, again, we would prefer to leave that in the hands of the professionals and let that be market based. But if that's something that's important, we can certainly agree to those that was suggested. We would prefer not, but understand the need for some guardrails if needed. The fiber cement panels, again, we'd like to obviously approve those as we've proposed. The fiber cement panel, and we've got some photos here, really are a better alternative than stucco. They have the same appearance as stucco, but they really perform better. The applicants already also removed EFS from, which is allowed, but they have removed that. We've talked about that north elevation of the residential being 80% masonry. Again, we're putting 80% masonry on the two sides, the west and the south. We would prefer the east and the north to be at 50%. It really gives some more architectural diversity, which I think you'll see, and it's a good-looking product there. The drive-through restaurant, again, we would prefer to leave that in. Obviously, that's what we've proposed. We have voluntarily limited a lot of the other more objectionable uses that could be done in BP 288, and we think this would really be complementary to what residents there would want. We have a wood fence on the north and east boundaries, which we think meets the UDC criteria. And again, that's in less visible locations. The chain link fence around the pond, again, we would prefer to leave the chain link on the Wooten side as well. And we have specified in the PD that it'll have a full, hedge for screening. The amenities, since the workshop, we have added the list of amenities that is pretty extensive. Granted, we do not have quantities or manufacturers, but at this, stage of the game, that's really very hard to do in this stage of the architectural design. And in the Wooten Road access, again, we've specified that, and I have an exhibit, so I won't belabor that right now. But here's the fiber cement panels. If you look at these drawings, the whiter colors are the fiber cement panels. So they really have a very high quality appearance. They look good close up or from a distance, and they really complement the brick that's used in other areas. So we think it's a good looking product and really would set the tone that the city is looking for. And it's probably a better alternative than doing stucco from scratch. Fencing, the detention pond is down there with the green around it, and that's where we're proposing the chain link fence, for safety and to keep the four-wheelers out. And then the blue on the west and south sides is the ornamental iron, and then the red would be the wood on the lower visibility areas. And then the resident gate, you can see it's there on the south side off of future Wooten Road, Smith Ranch Road number 2. The typical stacking requirement in the code is 40 feet. And so we've got about 32 feet from the gate to the curb line. And so we feel like, again, since this is a resident only, no kiosk, there really isn't going to be a lot of opportunity for people to be waiting in line to get through the kiosk. The only way you're going to get in here is with the clicker, or if you're emergency personnel. And then additionally, Wooten Road is scheduled to be a 3-lane road, 1 lane in either direction and a center turn lane. And so if there was additional stacking that was needed, there is a center turn lane where people would be able to get out of the through lanes of traffic before having to enter the property. The other thing to point out is, if you look at the left-hand drawing, we're not exactly sure if when Smith Ranch gets built, whether we will be granted a curb cut there for the median, since that's going to be a median road. And so from an exiting standpoint, this will be good to have this gate here as well for exiting traffic to avoid U-turns to go south. The list of amenities, this is in the PD. And so these are the items that are committed, and granted they don't have quantities, but again, at this stage of the game, those are very hard to program specific quantities. We have put the images throughout the PD to show the quality and the intent, and so we feel like this should be adequate, we hope. So just to summarize, again, as has been said, did you want to say anything? Before we get there, let me let Mr. Modametti say a word or two.
I'm Sud Motamedi. I just want to first start with thanking the city staff, Martin and his group. They've been really helpful to us, providing guiding lights and listening and participating and coming up with solution. I want to clarify a few things in here. One is that, as was stated, we started acquiring these pieces in 2006. Now this is 2022. And we've dealt probably with some 40 owners until we put all these pieces together. So it's been a real experience that I don't know if I'm going to repeat it again. But it has come out to be a product. We're very proud of the team that you've heard talking to. John is well known in the space about what he does across town. And I think if anybody can deliver a product there that could be really unique in the city of Pearland, it would be John and his team. Just for the sake of clarification, I don't think that we anticipate that the restaurant will go into a Smith Ranch Road as it is. The reason for asking for the drive-through is based on our experience, on the fact that across the street on the west side of Smith Ranch Road, we currently own a medical complex, and it has a pharmacy in it. And drive-through is an important aspect of it. So, that's one of the reasons that we're emphasizing, because the vision that we have for those two commercial development at this point does not include a retail space. It's primarily medical and business offices. We already have people who want space there, and that's what we are committing to build up to 6,000 square feet of space right away as the multifamily project is moving forward, because we do have people who want to occupy that space. So that's the only reason that we have said the drive-through. Otherwise, we can do without it. Thanks so much.
Can't say it better than that. We'll stop there. Thank you, and we'll be ready to answer questions at the appropriate time.
All right, I didn't get you before you left away. Mr. Modametti or Alan, you may be able to say, I know you're Mr. Modametti. I know my boss knows you, and I don't have that privilege, and I don't know if anybody else does. Which Modametti are you? The father. Okay, the father. So that's Nick Modametti then?
Masood.
Masood. Okay, Masood Modametti. That's the part that I missed earlier, and I don't know if y'all heard it, but we wanted to make sure we captured it for the record. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
And before we jump into discussion and clarification, I do want to apologize about the will versus may discussion. I had it in my notes to say will, or to say may. Clearly, it's in my head already. Just for the record, apologize to Alan on that.
So I know it's a little bit out of order. I would just say that from the legal department on a staff perspective, one of my jobs is to make sure that you have an ordinance that is enforceable or that staff can interpret. Things like may and will may be in the document, but anticipated and representative are also in there. And specifically in relation to the amenities, the sentence is anticipated common areas are. As the lawyer saying, what do they have to have? I couldn't tell you. It's anticipated. So it will, but it's only anticipated will, and then I get nervous. When we see architectural renderings or representative drawings, I say, what are the elements of those renderings and drawings that you, as a board, like, that we can put in architectural terms? I don't pretend to be an architecture. I don't pretend to want to design the building. But I can say that they have their own nomenclature, and they have elements, a language of their own, and you can include those elements. If there's something inside that urban style, high-end, Class A apartment that you think makes it different from the type of multifamily you would traditionally say no to, include those architectural terms and elements inside the ordinance so that you get what you're talking about. There may be a difference between cement fiber panels or boards. That's, some people would say, is hardy plank and has no design element to the type of panel that they show on their representative drawings that you can say, oh, well, if it has those architectural elements into it, it might make it the higher class development that we agree that we heard about inside, that we saw in the pictures and we heard at the workshop. So the workshop was supposed to be big picture. Now we're narrowing it down to regulations that the developer knows they have to construct, and the city has a way to enforce. And that's the comment that I wanted to make. I need something that I can enforce, or so that at least when staff comes to me and said, does this comply? I can say, yeah, it's very clear in the ordinance, versus it was a bit ambiguous. I mean, even directional terms sometimes can be ambiguous. North, south, east, and west. Is that external to the project, or is that internal? The south side of the building, that's the interior courtyard that's on the western side of the property. You can clarify it to make it enforceable and clear when we use those directional terms. If we're talking about external to the development versus internal to development, to even internal, separating the commercial and the multifamily residential. So I think they did a great job explaining that difference with the design plan for the fences. It's color coded and it's extremely clear. Staff might have some more preferences. Maybe you shouldn't just make the fence pretty in front of your complex. The people who have to see the fence around the detention pond should all have that same benefit of having it screened if this is the anticipated catalyst for the region. That's been described by both the applicants, the owner, and staff. Maybe everybody should have that landscaping around a chain link fence to enjoy that enhanced view, or a different screening element altogether. So that's the goal of my comments tonight. I don't want to slow the development down. I just want to make sure that we have enforceable language so that when somebody says, no, you can look at it and you can say, that's what I meant when I said yes. I wanted that enhanced element, or there was no confusion about those two things. So that leaves you with a lot of options, and I'm sure that there'll be plenty of discussion, as you've heard, both from the applicant's team of why they want to keep things and staff's team as to why they want cleaner language. It leaves you with options tonight. You can approve it knowing that we'll continue to work towards those goals. You could postpone it until you see exactly what you want to see. Unless you have a specific element in mind, it's hard for me to recommend a conditional approval or a conditional denial before it goes to city council. You could always deny it and force the issues if you wanted to. I wouldn't encourage that, but you could deny it and force the issues so that it takes a supermajority for city council to approve it, and then outline those issues that led to your recommended denial that would trigger that supermajority requirement. So I leave you with options, but I also want to make sure you understood why staff is saying we still need work on this, and that's so that we can get an ordinance that they can enforce and that there's no question on what those elements are.
Thank you. Persons wishing to speak for or against, I do want to start by saying that there was one letter received on September 29, 2022. I won't read the letter, but it is one that was in support for the rezoning, and it is pertaining to the item that we're discussing right now. In terms of people that are present in the audience wishing to speak for or against, I have speakers cards, and the first is for Mr. Michael McKinney. If you're available, could you please go to the podium? Please state your full name as well as your address for the record, and be mindful of your 3 minutes at the mic. Thank you.
Gotcha. I'm going to read from my notes. Here we go. My name is Michael McKinney. We are 2433 Smith Ranch Road, the corner L-shaped property on the north side of Smith Ranch Road, number 1. We feel the road expansion plus this said development is going to greatly benefit this area. If you, as you guys were talking about, it's kind of like in a dead zone, but we think that once it's built and the road is complete, everything else is going to start building up. I think it's going to be like a shot in the arm. Paraphrasing, hold on. There we go. And we appreciate that they are funding the utilities to our side of the street, or at least on this side of Smith Ranch Road. We have seen their other properties, as shown a few minutes ago, the estimated layout with the businesses in the front, and we think it will have a great look and it will be great for the area. So overall, we like it.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Mr. Carl Gearing, please go to the podium. Thank you. State your full name, address, and be mindful of your 3 minutes.
My name is Carl Gearing, and I'm here to represent 2401 Smith Ranch Road, which is directly to the north of this proposed project. And we are also in favor. We think the area has been blighted too long, and this development, I think, will help kickstart further development that's well needed on that street. And it appears to me this is not just an A project, this is an A+ project. This developer here, I've looked at their track record. They seem to have a really good track record with good developments. And in my opinion, for what it's worth, as far as amenities, I think that their residents are going to demand quality amenities for the amount of rent they're going to charge. So I don't see they're going to be able to skimp on amenities or look or anything. But I'm confident it'll be a good project, and I'm confident it'll be good for the city of Pearland. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Are there any persons in the audience wishing to speak for or against that I don't have a speaker's card from? Yes, sir, you can please. And when you get a chance, go out and fill out the form. Or you have it? Okay, thanks, great. When you get to the podium, please state your name, your address, and be mindful of your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Chris Mosley, and we own 2553 Smith Ranch Road. And I guess I just wanted clarification to make sure that it was going to stay, that area stay commercial, because we have future plans of building a structure ourselves.
So at this portion of the for or against commentary, we can't dialogue. We'll make note of that inquiry that you have, and when we have discussion, that's something that we can address. But I don't know that it's proper to address it at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Please go to the podium. Please state your name. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's all right. My name is Barry Coleman, 217 Sylvester Road, Angleton, Texas, 77515. And I have your card here. I'll give it to you after I and Nizam have spoken. We have, I'm representing Nizam Mia, who is owns the property along the entirety of the east line.
Hi, good evening. I'm Nizam Mia. I own the property to the east of this development, and my address is 3523 Coral Springs Drive, Manville, Texas.
The property on the east side there that's adjacent to the proposed development is 10418 Smith Ranch Road, number 2. We sent a letter in also, I think towards the end of August, if I remember correctly. We received a response last Monday, so we really didn't get to chew on that a whole lot over the last week to do our due diligence as far as how this is going to affect his agricultural products that he has there, chickens, ducks, goats, cows, how the construction for safety is going to be affected, how he's going to access the property up and down Smith Ranch Road, how long Smith Ranch Road number 2 will possibly be down before he can get in that direction, thereby just cutting him off to Smith Ranch Road 1 to gain access to his property. The safety features, if the contractors are out there and they're working on building, if they're doing a wood fence, which is something we would like to see on the east line and not chain link fence. During construction, if there's anyone that accidentally knocks his barbed wire fence down, knocks a gate off, he does have animals that could get out. Is there anything that we can discuss about that? Our public utility is going to be advanced down Wooten Road to his property, or are they just going to stay right there along the east side of Smith Ranch Road, the main road? The extension of Wooten Street, it's going to go through his property from his southeast corner and curve on some type of gradient up through his property, which there's a lot to, we need to know about that, which is, of course, off-site from the proposed development. I'm assuming that it's going to be concrete curb, gutter, walk, storm sewered on Smith Ranch Road number 2. I'm sure they probably went into that, and I just overlooked it. We realize that this is going to be a 4-story building up to 60 feet. The barrier that they have on the east side, it sounds good with the wood fence and with 30 feet of green belt, basically. We appreciate that very much, but there are just other questions we have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And this is more of a discussion item, and we're about to enter that segment of the program. So I don't think that this is the proper time to speak to your questions, but we're about to discuss, and we will bring these items up and make sure that they get addressed.
That's all I wanted to do.
Thank you. Any other persons wishing to speak for or against? Going once? Going twice? None? Okay, now we will staff discussion as well as commissioner discussion, comments.
I have a few questions for the developer of the Horizon. So one of the variances is to raise it from 35 to 60 feet. Am I correct? I just didn't have the list. And then you're going to add different types of facade around the building. So can you speak to the wind load designs on this? Since if I'm correct, Pearland only looks at the framing but not the outside. So when you're higher up and we're in a wind zone, what's the outlook of this material that you're going to use?
Sure. So we have to build to the code. So to the extent the code requires something or prohibits something, that's what we're going to do. We've built this type of building many times before, and we've never encountered a problem with the framing or the exterior materials. If your question specifically is on the fiber cement product, I will tell you that first off, it is different than hardy plank. Hardy plank is a linear product about 6 inches high and as long as you want it to be. these are panels. These are solid panels. So it gives you it gives you a stucco look. It looks just like stucco. The building that we have it on, that Mr. Mueller showed the picture of, that is a development we just finished up in the Heights neighborhood in Houston. We're getting rents there that are about $2.50 a square foot. And to put that in some perspective, we think the rents here at these apartments are going to be in the $1.80, $1.90, maybe a little bit higher range. We love that product because of the aesthetics and because of the performance of it. It's a cementitious product. It doesn't burn. Termites don't eat it. It doesn't rot. I have no qualms at all about putting it on any of my developments. I think it looks great, and I think there's a lot of developments around Houston that use it as well. You just don't notice it because unless you get up really right close to it, within a foot or two of it, you can't even tell.
Okay, and then my other question is the commercial tracks in the front of the apartments. It says not in scope. So is the detention accounting for that?
Yes, yeah. So the architect, my architect, my multifamily architect, put this site plan together, and she is not designing the commercial buildings. That's not her. I mean, it's not her charge on this, and so the detention is sized to accommodate that, but she put those notes on there specifically because she is not designing them. She'll be designing our apartments, but not those.
And then is there in front of the detention ponds on Smith Ranch Road, I can't tell, is that a building that's proposed there? It says something about 1-story, 2-story, leasing club, or is that just green space?
That's the legend.
Okay. So there's nothing there?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's just indicating that, part of the clubhouse will have 2-story volume, part of the clubhouse will have 1-story volume. It's a 4-story building, but parts of it will be 1 and 2 stories interior.
So you guys don't own the land right there?
That's correct. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's just where the legend happens to be.
Okay. So, and my other question is, there's a variance request to have the pond across the street. So it's a very shallow area. I'm going to assume you guys are looking at possibly a pump type detention system. So what happens to the properties to the north there? What is the plan for that? If the pump fails, if you need a pump, like what's the plan?
So again, early in the process, so we haven't done a lot of that detailed design, but with Smith Ranch being improved, there's already a deep storm sewer there, a big storm sewer box. So we do have a deeper outfall than you would typically expect with a roadside ditch. So we have the big box that's in Smith Ranch, as well as whatever new storm sewer will be coming. And so the pond, the flow from the site would flow through underground culverts, sized for the 100-year with an extreme event to get across the street into there. And then there would be storm sewer from the pond along Smith Ranch out to the outfall storm sewer along Smith Ranch number 2, future Wooten, out to the storm sewer in Smith Ranch. It is possible that there could be a pump, but we believe with the addition of that extra acre that has been acquired that a pump will not be needed.
Okay. And then can we go back to the list of variances requests? So I think that I really like the product and the look of the product. The only thing is I kind of agree on the pond area. The chain link fence would look horrible to the neighbors around you. That's my only hang up. But I think that I would be okay with granting approval, assuming that these items with the city get worked out. to whether it be the fencing or making sure everything was properly screened from the neighbors. I don't think that's fair for the neighbors to see that chain link fence, or for that corridor for people to drive down and see the chain link fence. So proper landscaping would be great. And then, yes, I guess those are my only questions that I had on this development, was the height and the impact of that. And then just the pond outfall. And that's it.
Any other commissioners, did you have any comments?
My apologies, Commissioner Boswell, in regards to one of your questions, Commissioner Hendricks. Harvey, is the reference to that detention location that they have for the deviation 2.6.1, that's an EDCM standard, is that correct? Was that a UDC standard? You know off the top of your head?
I can look it up. Just give me a second.
Mr. Mueller, you may know off the top of your head. I know you've got encyclopedic knowledge there.
Well, I do have paper to look at, so that does help. Yeah, I've got that as a UDC 2.6.1, but you know what? That is actually the criteria manual. You're correct. That's the EDCM criteria.
And I was just going to suggest that if there's a deviation, the deviation needs to be from something in the UDC. That's where your deviations typically would be. If it's something inside a different code or policy, you wouldn't reference that inside your zoning district regulation.
Okay, so it's possible that this one is not anything that we're looking at, the detention.
I would say that it's something very desired by the applicant. However, it would not be appropriate to allow that deviation in this particular ordinance.
Okay,
So-
thank you for the
Could
clarity.
I comment on that? So this is kind of an area where the criteria and the zoning, come into play with each other. So obviously we're getting a site plan approved in this document, and that site plan shows the detention in the location that it is, which is across the street from a public street. So the engineering criteria says you can't drain across a public street. And so it's kind of, to us, it's more of a communication tool that, if we're getting this site plan approved, we were putting it on the table to make sure everybody knew that that was going to ultimately require an engineering variance. So while the perhaps approval of this document does not approve that engineering variance, it is at least if it does get approved, it's at least a statement of intent on the city council's part as to how they want to handle this project.
Lawrence, if I may. So the section 2.6.1 also states requires approval from city engineer. So the language is already there. And Mr. Mueller and us, and his design team, we met a couple times before. So we agreed on the general idea, the overall idea of this concept. So I leave it between you and planning to decide if you want to leave the language there or not.
So the letter from the city engineer, the variance request, that would be what the deviation is that allows it. And clearly staff is okay with that under those circumstances. But again, it wouldn't be in your zoning ordinance. Anything that's in the deviations, according to the UDC, it's deviations from base district regulations. That's UDC issues, things in chapter 3 and 4 of the UDC. If it's a variance or a deviation from a different ordinance, that wouldn't be appropriate. And I understand the design concerns that they have. They want to make sure that this design is going to be allowable. And clearly they were aware of the regulation, city engineers aware of the regulation, and they went through the process for that. So that's something that the building criteria, and we appreciate them letting us know ahead of time and coming forward so that we can work that issue out. And it would have to be reflected in the design plan. So they are in a conundrum because their design plan and their site plan have to show it. But this ordinance doesn't override the EDCM. This ordinance or proposed ordinance would not override anything other than UDC issues or things that are in chapter 3 and 4 of the UDC.
And just to add on to that, I think the last line there, the entry gate, that's also an EDCM criteria. So kind of the same theory that we just discussed, I think would apply there also.
And that would be another example. And, you know, as they said, they anticipate the traffic. I think you anticipate everybody coming and going from Smith Ranch Road or the feeder road. However, as staff would look at it, they could just as easily come from Broadway or go to Broadway. And it depends on if they're turning left or right. And even though there's a remote, how many people have to wait for that remote controlled access to come in? Because potentially, if you look at the chart outlined by the applicant and identified by staff, it could be up to 330 single-family units, 2 people each. How many of those, if they all have a car and it's 2 people each, 660 cars, how many of them will go through the primary gates? How many of them will come through the back gate, since they would have that option to have that clicker? And what potential impact is that on future Wooten Road? They're committed to building portions of that. There is a center turn lane. The center turn lane affects left turns going into the property from one direction. How many would be from the right-hand direction coming from Wooten or Broadway? I'm sure that the thought is everybody's going to be working in Houston, and that would be their primary route.
I think, yeah, again, the full TIA has not been completed. It'll get done before platting and development. But yeah, I think that's John's marketing response, or their research indicates that the majority of folks here are going to be commuting to the Med Center. You know, and I guess I'd just say if you look from a practical standpoint, I mean, there's a lot of apartment complexes that have, you know, they're a single point of entry or their main point of entry on Broadway or some other main street. And, you know, just think about, you know, do you see a lot of cars queuing, and is there a problem, you know? And so I think from a practical standpoint, you know, the TIA will tell the tale, but again, we don't see this as an issue. And frankly, I wouldn't be standing here if I thought that it would be a safety issue.
And staff would suggest that the TIA would be the appropriate tool for that. We don't know if this zoning regulation should be the one that dictates that. It should be the TIA that dictates it. It should be the platting that dictates it.
Again, it relates back to the site plan. So if we had to build the full entry as it shows on the EDCM, boulevard entry, 40 feet of stacking space, then this site plan that we have doesn't work. So that's why it's very important to, at least at this stage, say, yes, conceptually, that's why we put it in here, so everybody had their eyes open and they could see what it was. Again, if you say no, that obviously tells the applicant something. And more than likely, again, if you look at the way the site's laid out, they're not able to accommodate that full standard city standard at that secondary location. It's just not feasible without encroaching on the way the buildings are laid out.
Okay. You mentioned TIA is not complete. Thank you. That was one of my questions, so I understand that. I believe, Martin, staff mentioned that there was a pump that was not approved. You don't agree with them having a lift station?
Correct. They are proposing to have a private lift station, whereas normally we would have a public lift station.
But the private lift station would be maintained by the applicant, correct?
That is private.
Okay. And all improvements for utilities are on the applicant's dime, and they are sized for future developments that's going to come in this area?
Martin, if I may.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So the developer requires, like any other typical development, to extend water and sanitary sewer along the Smith Ranch Road, the main street, north to south. Since all 3 lots they're proposing is fronting Smith Ranch Road, they only need to extend it up to the end of their property along that road. We are working internally to explore the idea of extending maybe water line along the future Wooten Road, and maybe some improvement to the sanitary system, to the existing sanitary system. Has not been finalized, so I don't want to really comment on that. So the applicant's responsibility, as I mentioned, they only extend in water and sanitary sewer along the Smith Ranch Road. The issue of the lift station, just to explain it, is we have an ordinance that prevents more than one lot utilize the existing service line. So what the applicant proposed, and we had several meetings internally, and we have not came to any conclusion, is instead of proposing a public lift station, which is very costly, to propose one simple private lift station large enough to serve the 3 lots they're proposing, the apartment complex and 2 commercial, and tie into the gravity line that they also proposing to extend along the Smith Ranch Road. So that's where we are for right now. Again, the lift station part has not been decided yet.
Okay. And the detention, is it, not that it really matters, is it dry or wet?
I don't know that that's been fully designed, but I would anticipate it would be dry.
Okay. I would think that with your product typically being high end, like you said, that you would want to screen that with something more than a hurricane fence, more of a wood fence, something to block that view.
Again, on the Wooten side, we're proposing the full screen, but again, that's our proposal, and if y'all have other things in mind, we'll react.
And the exit off of Smith Ranch 2, I would think that it would be congestion. I'm actually torn. I think you need another exit for congestion. 300 plus units with one entrance and exit can be problematic, but I guarantee you're going to have staging issues on Smith Ranch 2 because of that entrance and exit. I was under the impression at first it was exit only, but it is entrance and exit, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And just to clarify, our main entrance is off of Smith Ranch Road. So there are two entrances and exits to the development. One off Smith Ranch Road, one off Wooten.
And one off Wooten. Smith Ranch Road 2. Yes. Got it. Okay. And the pad sites in front, they're proposed to be one building each.
Mr. Modametti, if you could, thank you.
There's going to be at this point, for the first one, we're going to have one building. The second one, we are going to be considering maybe additional, maybe 2 or 3, depending on what the market supports and how much we're able to build in there. But for the first phase that we're going to start immediately is only one building of 6,000 square foot.
Okay, thank you. And Martin, the amenities, is that solved at this point? I know it says will, not shall or may, but is the issue the square footage of the amenities or?
Prior to the will, I know you asked Martin.
I'm sorry.
Prior to the will or may, the word anticipated is used. Okay. So that still means that maybe not. Or I don't know how many are on that list. How many do you want guaranteed on that list? Or which ones do you want guaranteed on that list? And which ones do you want to pick and choose? The market's going to require them. I think the market will require them to have many of those things.
Yes.
However, if they're being given credit for the amenity, you should guarantee the amenity in regards to the design plan or in regards to the PD district. Instead of letting the market choose, if you want credit.
I think it should be a number of amenities that staff recommend.
So just to give you some flavorful history here, Baker's Landing had itemized amenities with square footage, with numbers of things per linear foot, numbers of types of facilities that would be provided. Lake Park at the north end of Cullen also had very specific amenity plan for what would be provided for each of those developments. Both of those were planned developments that have been approved long before any of us were in the positions that we're in right now. What we've seen over time is that the bar has moved from being more specific on amenitized language to more loose on amenitized language. And the Alexander track, which we just had this past year, had not as much of detail as this list that's provided. Our goal is to swing that pendulum back towards the middle on both providing flexibility to the applicant, but still maintaining a document that we know will have a certain quantity and quality. Full acknowledgement. This is most likely, if it keeps the developer and the multifamily builder in partnership, this will be a very high quality product. But the PD needs to maintain that level of language to ensure that it reaches there.
Sure.
Yeah, if I can jump in here. So a number of folks have said it, and it's 100% right. For this to be a marketable apartment development and to get the rents that I know I'm going to need to get, I'm going to have to blow out the amenities. I'm fine committing to that list of amenities that we have in there. If the language that we have proposed is not sufficient, then we'll put language in there that is sufficient. But that list of 8 or 10, 12 amenities, whatever it was, I'll commit to put those in.
So this isn't a tax credit deal. This is all market rate.
Oh, all market. Okay. Yeah.
And we're doing this now. We have 3 weeks until they go to council. Is that correct? So that's enough time to come to a consensus, is the right word, but agreement where staff is comfortable moving forward to cross T's and dot I's before it goes to council.
So we rely on y'all's conversation to kind of guide us and provide, I think, as Alan said, where the rails are, and then we'll continue the conversation, ensuring that we're negotiating in spirit for what the P&Z recommended for. So if y'all say this is what we are, really concerned about and want to make sure that these items are addressed, but we're willing to give approval as long as the negotiations still move forward and the language tightens up on these issues, then that's what we will make sure gets presented to council at first reading.
My recommendation would be to move forward and again tighten up the language. But could you please explain the supermajority option?
Yes, sir. If you voted no, and then you stated your reason for that no, and that's what a majority of you did, then when it goes to council, it would take a supermajority of council to override your recommendation. You would have outlined, or you could have outlined, the reasons why you're voting to no, so that when council sees, if they come back, or when they go to council, that those issues have been addressed, you would think that council would be more prone to override your recommendations because all the things that you stated had been addressed. That's what the thought process is. That's an option. You can say, I'm going to vote yes, or somebody can make a motion to vote yes, as long as you make sure that the deviations are only to the UDC, or as long as you better describe the representative products, or as long as you remove the conditional anticipated words and you guarantee 12 out of 12 amenities for the residential, or the amenities are of whatever quantity or square footage that you deem is appropriate. You can make it a conditional approval as well, or you could just leave your comments. And I understand, you can leave your comment saying, I want these things in here by the time it goes to council, and it's not going to trigger the supermajority, but it does make sure that the developer and the owner, they know what you're expecting, and then also your comments are carried to city council, and they will also know what your expectations are. And if you identified it, but you didn't want to slow the process up, you would hope that council looks at the things you identified and also says, well, no, this needs to happen here. I mean, there's a few different ways that it can happen, or you could always postpone it until you are satisfied. I mean, that's also an option. That wouldn't get you to the meeting that's 3 weeks from now, but that is an option that is in your ability. It affects the developer, and I'm sure that they would rather you not do that. And I'm not encouraging you to do that. I'm just saying it's an option that's on the table, because it's your recommendation at the end of the day, and I want to make sure that you've explored all options and you're comfortable with however you choose to proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I like the product. I'm familiar with your product. I think it'll be a good addition to Pearland. I just would like to see you and the city, you and staff work together more to, again, cross T's and dot I's to make sure we're on the same page.
Well, my fellow commissioners have done such a great job asking questions that I don't really have a lot more. First thing I want to do is I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight and talking us through this project, especially our citizens in Pearland, to voice either their approval or disapproval for the project. Yours is the most important voice in how we move together in the future. So I would be in favor of moving forward and letting the developer and staff work together to iron out all of these little details. I think that's the partnership that has to happen.
Thank you. I know that I said there were several citizens that approached the podium and had questions, and I wanted to address that during the discussion session. And for the gentleman right here, I know that you spoke to inquiring about the commercial property, and I want to get your question correct because I want it answered. So could you ask that again?
Yes, I was asking about we own 2553 Smith Ranch Road, and we were concerned whether or not if that area was going to stay commercial so that we can, if we choose to develop a future development on that property.
Thank you.
And 2553 is actually south of Smith Ranch Road 2, number 2.
Okay. Would staff or the developer be able to speak to this?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see on the screen, 2553 Smith Ranch Road. Let me actually do something kind of cool here with the transparency. 2553 is right here, this piece of property, and it is all in this lovely blue and purple hatched shade. And that property is zoned BP 288 and will remain BP 288. BP 288 is a commercial zoning district, and it is a design district with some additional specifications on facade, landscaping, lighting, uses, those sorts of things. When this is done, I'll make sure that you've got my card to be able to continue the discussion.
Hopefully that answer was what you needed tonight. We had 2 other citizens that came to the podium and spoke, but I don't see them, so they left. I can't address their concerns, but I saw them speaking with the developer, so hopefully whatever they needed answered was answered. With that being said, I have a couple of comments that I would like to make. I do appreciate the presentation and everyone being here tonight. And I guess I can go in order of the suggestions of staff. The first being the 70% maximum of 1-bedroom units. I do agree with that. I almost think that is a bit too much. I know when people come out to Pearland, when you're leaving Houston, it is for the price point as well as space. And just thinking about the current state of affairs and how jobs are set up, I'm seeing, and research is showing, the need for more bedrooms. So I was concerned at the 70%, but I definitely wouldn't want to go over that 70% number. And concerning the material that has been debated, excluding the fiber.
Pardon me, Commissioner Boswell, could I get you to hold on just a moment? I think we've lost a quorum.
Okay.
But I think we will get our quorum back in 2 minutes.
All right. We have our quorum back, so I will continue my commentary. I know that there was a lot of comment around the type of material, and so a question that I had for the developer, I know that they wanted that fiber excluded, and I wanted to know for the other properties that you have, this material that you're suggesting, is that the material that is at some of the other properties that were referenced?
Yes, ma'am. Alan showed a picture of our Heights development. Alan, if you can. That one, yes. There we go. Yeah, so all that white material that you see that looks like stucco, that's the fiber cement panel.
Okay.
Is there a subcategory of fiber cement panel so that we can make sure that fiber cement panel could be different products? In order to get this product, again, I don't pretend to be an architect or a contractor. Is there a different way to define it or categorize it? Do you know?
We worked on a prior rezoning over in League City, and we were allowed to use this material, and it's strictly defined as fiber cement panel. I've never known it to be described as anything other than that. I can get you a cut sheet, I guess.
I'm just concerned that there might be, and I don't mean to take over your question, but as a person who wanted to make sure we get clarity on this.
Sure.
If fiber cement panel could include products that are different than this, I want to make sure you can get the product that you need.
Sure.
If the commission's willing to accept that and not get the type of fiber cement panel that might be a little bit more broadly categorized that they might not be in favor of.
Right. Let me work with my contractor to get a cut sheet or some kind of better description of it, which I think will probably answer that question and give everyone the comfort that they're getting the look they want and give us the product that we want to use.
Thank you for allowing me to interrupt your issue.
You're fine. So question for staff. Why was it suggested to exclude this and to stick more with the stucco? Wasn't that the recommendation?
So part of our, I think Lawrence actually explained it very well there, and I'm gonna try and say it similarly to what Lawrence just said. Fiber cement panel can be a broad category, and that panel can have a lot of different textures, can have a lot of different designs, and it can be very wide. So the fact that the facade renderings are there just to provide an intent on what could be developed, but not necessarily what will be developed, was part of our concern about, well, what texture, what is the actual design that will be installed. So that was part of our concern. Again, we think this looks really nice, but what is in the PD doesn't necessarily provide this performance.
Thank you. And with that being said, I do believe the devil is in the details, and I believe in as much detail as possible. So I know that the developer said that you would look more into that, knowing that it's the fiber cement panel, but just being as detailed as possible, because you are setting the character for this particular area, as some citizens have commented on. There's been nothing in that area for a very long time, so you will be setting the standard. That's a good thing, but you might view it as being troublesome at times, because that standard is going to be high, and we're going to just want to make sure that the detail is there to support what you're saying is going to occur concerning any type of materials. And I think that is the perfect segue into the language that was on page 7 of the design plan. And maybe it's the lawyer in me with the Lawrence, but I do not like anticipated. So I do appreciate you saying that you would commit to that list, because anticipated is defined as probable. It's not definite. So I would want to know a list of the amenities that would be available for this particular plan.
And I'll take the sword for that, not being an English major, I guess. But what I intended to say with that sentence was that these would be the minimum, that there would be other things. And so we can certainly make that wording more precise.
Thank you. And I know that there was also a proposal to have a drive-through. I would be against that. I don't want to see a drive-through in that area. I think that there is going to be enough traffic, and we're also working out the kinks concerning the access point for actual residents that will be able to exit and enter. Go ahead, Martin, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to provide a little clarification on that. It's specifically drive-through on restaurants.
Okay.
So drive-through, and I only bring this up because of Mr. Motomedi's comment about the drive-through for the pharmacy. A drive-through is allowed in the BP 288 zoning district. It just has to be properly screened and not facing. So if it's interior to the development and not necessarily in front of or directly visible from BP 288, then it is allowed within the BP 288 standards. The use restaurant with drive-through is not permitted at all within BP 288. So I want to break apart the conversation there. What they're requesting is to have permitted restaurant with drive-through. Staff is not recommending for restaurant with drive-through. Drive-through as a allowed feature of a non-restaurant use can still be allowed.
Okay.
If I may add, at this point, given the scope of the investment that we're going to make, collectively between the multifamily and what we do, we're talking about some $70 million of investment. We are not planning to have a restaurant in there. So I appreciate Martin clarifying this, that this is going to be essentially for internal use. And what we had in mind mostly was if there was going to be a need for a pharmacy. Other than that, we don't anticipate that this is going to deviate from our current vision, which would be high-end medical building and office buildings, matching when compatible with the Class A multifamily.
So it sounds like we're both
on the same
agreement on that.
Thank you.
And just clarify, we're not opposed to restaurants without drive-through. So we would encourage to have restaurants just without the drive-through. So restaurants can go there. There's no
But
problem
not
with
the
that. It's not the drive-through.
Got you. Okay.
I had one more question. I don't know if this would help the situation when it goes to council on the cement. What's the word?
Cement fiber panel is
Panels.
what I'm thinking.
Okay. So just looking on the product evaluation code for Texas windstorm, even though Pearland has limited rules over that, that's more on under windstorms general code. They do have 7 different manufacturers of it, and then there's probably like 50 different products altogether on these, and I would assume that you would be using one of these that's on the list, and I would be totally fine with that type of product because it would meet a high standard in safety in high wind load conditions. So I don't know if that would help, but that would be something that maybe City Council can look at is using that product. It just be something that falls on that list.
Can you
my only comment.
restate the list that you were using?
The Texas windstorm product evaluation list.
Thank you.
Yeah, and they have a whole category for fiber cement exterior coverings.
And I'm sure that you are not in construction documents phase at this point, but I'm sure you have a spec from your other products. Submit the spec from your other product. I do have a degree in architecture, so just submit your spec from your other project. Should be acceptable to staff, and I guarantee you it'll meet that same standard.
And I had a couple more comments. I do concur with the comments concerning the fencing. Again, this is, you're setting the standard, and we want to make sure that as far as beautification is concerned, it looks and it is a nice character to complement that area. What's there? And then for the access point for that additional gate, I'm torn. I've lived in a complex that has that additional access point where you can come in or come out. It is going to create additional traffic, but then again, I do agree that you need something else besides just one access. So I'm kind of torn concerning that. All in all, I know I've had a lot of comments. I do really like the product, but for me to be in favor of it, it would be a lot of conditions accompanying it just to make sure we're on the same page concerning the detail and knowing exactly what we're getting and is coming into this particular community.
Yes, ma'am. And if I could say something about the fence along Wooten, the idea was not just to have a chain link fence and nothing else there. The idea was always to have a hedge that would hide the chain link fence. So the thinking behind proposing a chain link fence was that whether you put ornamental iron or chain link or something else back there, you're not going to see it anyway because you've got greenery in front of it. That it was not meant to set a low standard or anything like that. It was just that it's going to be one of those invisible materials that no one sees, and figured that we would allocate the dollars that we'd spend on an upgrade fence elsewhere where it'd have more of an impact. But I just wanted to be clear on that. It was nothing nefarious on our part. And with respect to the second entry, fire departments usually like to have a second entry as well, especially on a property this size. The fact that it's resident only ingress and egress certainly will limit some of that traffic. All the guests and such will come in directly off Smith Ranch. And one of our concerns, and one of the reasons we wanted it to have both ingress and egress, is we don't know where the median cut is going to be on the new Smith Ranch Road. And what we didn't want to do is have a situation where somebody was trying to come home, they had to go down to Wooten Road, do a U-turn, and come back to the main entrance off Smith Ranch Road to get home. We thought that would be a traffic hazard and inconvenient. We'd rather them just take a left turn onto Wooten and go in through that back entry if that's what they wanted to do.
Thank you. Were there any other additional comments or feedback?
Ms. Boswell, so that staff is able to understand your comments in regards to the fencing. I think one of staff's primary areas of concern was the detention pond at Wooten. I'm calling it Wooten to reduce confusion, future Wooten. Am I understanding that correctly? Correct. And I understand the development team saying that they were going to put screening and vegetative screening on the Wooten side. And I think that staff is suggesting that for somebody like, I apologize, I think it was Mr. Mosley, if I was getting it right, Mr. and Miss Mosley, whose property is next to the detention pond, staff is suggesting that that should be screened there too. Or for the people, because that's where that curve of Wooten comes up on what would be the far south, far west side, that should also be screened. And maybe I'm confusing and misunderstanding the PD document, but is that what the plan was, to only put vegetative screening on the Wooten side and not on the other sides of the detention pond?
That is the proposal, yes.
And were you suggesting that you wanted the vegetative screening on the Wooten side, or were you suggesting that you wanted it on the other sides of the detention pond as well?
I wanted it on the other sides of the detention pond as well.
And I thought I heard one other person say that they wanted enhanced screening, but I didn't know if that meant the vegetative screening only on Wooten side, or if you were also talking about the other sides of the detention pond.
I wanted enhanced screening, and I have a concern about it being vegetative. It has to be maintained. It can die. Therefore, there be no screening at that point. I would much rather a fence to block visuals, not just vegetative screening.
Okay, and I think you might have referenced it as a hurricane fence then, is that right?
Hurricane, not a hurricane fence.
I'm sorry, a chain link fence with the hurricane slats is what I'm used to seeing, and maybe I made an assumption based on what you were saying.
I would accept the slats in the hurricane fence. I don't think that is attractive at all, but I'm trying to have a happy medium here.
Okay. So I don't think staff has gotten that consensus from the board itself, but I am confident that we will keep advancing the issue unless I've heard something from somebody else or I failed to ask or understand it from somebody else.
That might have been me. I was talking about the screening. Yes, I mean, I would like appropriate screening from the neighbors. If they develop, they don't want to have a chain link fence. You know, if they develop their commercial tract of property, how does that affect their property? You know, so definitely we want it to be screened where there may be development that has to look at that area.
And there's definitely two sides to every coin, and we get that. It may be that when the property, if this is the catalyst that everybody hopes it will be, that when other properties develop, they can put their screening on their property. I mean, we get that. I think that staff understands that, but staff is encouraging something enhanced from this developer since they're the ones who are coming in with the zone change today.
If, again, not to put words in the staff's mouth, but I think the report said screening or enhanced fencing along future Wooten, not the entire boundary, I believe. And I think I've heard some of the commission saying enhanced fencing around the entire boundary. So there's
and I think that that's where part of the difference of understanding is, Mr. Mueller. Maybe I misunderstood staff as well.
There was a slide that had a red side and a blue side that was
mine.
Clear.
Can you put me back up, Martin?
Is that possible?
This is what we've proposed. So the on the main body of the property, the blue is the upgraded metal fence, ornamental iron. Thank you. The red is the wood, which the gentleman that represented the property owner to the east said they were fine with that. We've proposed the green, which is chain link on all around the detention pond, with vegetative screening along the Wooten side. That's what's in our proposal.
And the staff report discussed having an upgraded fence along the Wooten Road side. So the line that's parallel with Wooten.
I apologize. I misunderstood staff.
No problem.
That is fully on me. I don't mean to confuse the issue.
I really like the idea of other people screening their side of the fence when they've developed. I
thought you would jump on that.
That's a really good idea. Yes.
So when staff says upgraded fencing along Wooten, is that vegetative fencing?
So what we had discussed was an upgraded fence material. So having, a wrought iron fence or a decorative fence of some type. The plan development document does discuss screening of 4 foot in height. But as we've seen, sometimes vegetative screens fail and then it becomes a code enforcement issue. From a development standpoint, enjoy seeing a higher quality material. The material I know can be maintained longer and with better ease than a landscape solution. I do enjoy the incorporation of both, though. So
because a wrought iron fence doesn't stop visual; it just looks better than a chain link fence.
Correct, which is why you have to have the incorporation of both.
Correct.
I could interject in talking with Mr. Cottrell this evening. So I think, we'd be acceptable to doing the ornamental iron along the future Wooten side. Frankly, having it open is probably better just from a safety and security standpoint. as opposed to having it like a solid fence. So, is better actually to have an open fence there. So, yeah, we would be prepared to change along Wooten, we could change that to the ornamental iron, make that blue, but we would like the opportunity to keep the other sides as the chain link, since those are, at this point in time, more remote.
And just to be clear, the side of the detention facing Wooten, because that's two sections. There's the long section that's up against Smith Ranch Road 2. There's a smaller section that faces Smith Ranch Road as well.
This part right here is what I was saying. Did you have something else in mind?
No, just further, that part is along Smith Ranch Road 2.
Right.
There's another section that faces Smith Ranch Road.
Down here?
Correct. Is that what staff is? Does staff include that as well?
No, I was just going with what is parallel to the road.
Just trying to be clear.
Yeah. Appreciate it. I was going to bring up the fact that the radius for Wooten is, as proposed, starts to bend either just at the corner or outside of this property. So, there could be potential discussion or argument for a view of the first 30 to 60 feet at that corner as the green line heads south. But that will be for whenever a capital improvement project comes forward and proposes the connection for Wooten Road. Again, thinking of it globally as the view of the driver along that curved Wooten Road.
So can we say the first 40 feet on that's the east side going south? Is that correct?
We're talking directions, which is what Lawrence
I understand what you're
suggested,
saying.
so, yeah.
With the first 40 feet of the east side of the fence going south at the edge of the property. I understand, and I think that Alan is probably going to get you a really good color chart. If that's what you, if a majority of you say that, I think we'll find a different colored line.
Yeah,
designated.
and there is a fencing exhibit in the PD. This is just my art to try to put it on the aerial photo for the presentation, but we can update the exhibit that's in the PD to match what's been discussed.
And I'm only being, I guess, I understand that staff and the city council will understand exactly what we're trying to do and just trying to be clear. So, want to be clear amongst ourselves as well. So, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time.
Any additional comments or feedback? Seeing none, how are we proceeding? Are we?
I think we proceed to vote that we're either for or against it based on staff recommendations. What are your options? Or our comments that it's generally moving forward. We want it to continue. I want it to continue.
I would recommend, I think that Mr. Mueller probably had the best slide in regards to the deviations, or I think he outlined what staff comments were and what they're asking for. And maybe if y'all can say which of those there's a majority of you want to see changed by the time it gets to the second, we would call that a conditional approval. So it's comments 1 through 6. Pardon? Yeah, you had a motion and a second. Correct. So a motion to amend, and if there is a consensus, so this is still part of the discussion item, if there is a consensus of you who wants to address those issues there, saying yes this, no this, or we've got agreement, because I think we also reached some consensus and alleviated some misunderstanding already in the evening. I hadn't gone through that item by item, but So I would suggest for the purposes of the public, maybe use the microphone. I mean, I hear you, I understand what you're saying.
I agreed with staff's recommendations, so I was asking fellow commissioners what out of this list they were okay with, or did they want to deviate to what the developer had proposed?
I think that's a mixed bag because personally, I agree with number one. Number two, we said for the applicant to submit the spec sheet on the cement panel for staff. Was that it? Go ahead, Mark.
So what I was going to say, and Alan has rode this rodeo with me once or twice before. When we have items like this, I take notes throughout the whole performance and the whole everything. So if you bear with me for a minute, I can run through a list of kind of what I've heard, and then y'all can tell me from there, no, go this way, no, go that way. Cool. Okay. So first, there's an agreement on going with the staff recommendation for the 70% as discussed within the staff report on issue number 1. Issue number 2, that the developer will provide some additional clarification on the material, and that will be included in the first reading. On issue number 3, that this has been resolved and restaurants with drive-throughs will not be permitted. On issue number 4, agree to have the fencing in character with the proposed fencing within the fencing exhibit. Up to y'all to determine if you want to go with the additional 40-foot south and east. And then number 5,
Had that they were in agreement with removing I forgot what the word was, anticipated.
Yeah, that anticipated will be removed, and that the developer will provide some additional language on that they will tighten up the language there. And number 6, there was concern with the access, but as part of the access, since they will be the first in, they'll be able to control where the median cut is for Wooten Road. So it is both an issue and not an issue because they will be the first developer into.
Excuse me, Mark. I apologize.
Sure, that's why you're here.
Just to clarify something, there would not be any median along Wooden Road. The median I believe the applicant was referring to was for the Smith Ranch Road, the street north to south. And we already know where the locations are for the median cut. It's one along the Smith Ranch Road 1, and the other one is in front of the Smith Ranch Road 2. The plans are at 100% with TxDOT. We are just working toward the bidding process. Not we, TxDOT is working toward the bidding the process and start the construction.
Right. So
it's the right of way.
Yeah. So based on that, there is no median cut for our main entrance on Smith Ranch Road, which makes it all the more necessary to have that secondary entrance on Wooten to prevent or reduce the number of U-turns that are required, as Mr. Couturier was speaking about.
What's the right-of-way width on Smith Ranch Road 2 near the second entrance?
60. Ultimate width of 60. Currently is 40.
Martin, I think I'm in agreement with your list that you came up with.
I try to make these meetings easier.
Yes.
I would agree. I like your notes. It sounds like everything I heard was very nicely summarized. So I would go with that.
Just to clarify, I didn't quite hear what the number 6 recommendation was on the access.
So with that being the entrance that has to be used because there's not a median to the property itself coming off of Smith Ranch Road, a good number of people will be going there. Theoretically, it could have a left turn lane. Do you want there to be enough room for one car inside the gate, or do you think that they should have more room? I think that that's what it ultimately comes down to.
Do they have room for more cars? Because ideally, 2.
Yeah, so here's on the right-hand side is kind of the blow up. So future Wooten Road would be running left and right on the bottom. And so from where the gate is, and I'm sorry, it's about 33 feet from the gate to the curb. And I think the standard is 40 and some other things. So, I mean, it would be possible to bump that up 7 feet and get 2. But it's, not going to be possible to have, the median, the full standard requires a median entrance, a place to turn around, and the median, has the call box on it. So without a call box, we don't think there's the need for the median necessarily, but I think there is a way to bump that fence up to get 40 feet of stacking, which would be essentially 2 cars.
I would be good with the bumping the fence back and allowing for 2 cars. I do think that they need another entrance in and out. So I'm for that.
And staff is in complete agreement with allowing another in and out. I mean, I don't think that that's the issue. So it comes down to, can they move it back? Is there a way to design it so that they can move it back? Our criteria has a median, and engineering can, I think, allow for a variance for the median. It might be that they have to make it a little bit wider. And while we would all hope that the only people who would turn into the property are people who have a remote, my experience with handling accident reports is that there are a lot of people who use driveways to turn for whatever reason. They might turn in it, and as soon as that one car turns in it, realizes that they don't have a remote, they need a way to get out.
So can we propose to make it wider?
The engineering design criteria manual issue, I think.
Then it shouldn't matter then at that point for us. If it's going to be worked out via TIA or engineering, then.
Well, and I think that part of it is it's required inside the design plan. You're supposed to have a site plan as part of your design plan. This is what they're proposing. Part of this is controlled by the UDC, but there's another component that is controlled by the EDCM or a TIA.
I'd be good if they could bump the gate back, just get another vehicle in there so we can move this along.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say the number 6 can be worded to meet that spirit.
I think both the development team and staff are better understanding the concerns, and I would hope that we're able to get City Council what they need by the first reading.
I think the only thing I didn't hear was the 80% versus 50% masonry on that north side. Also did not hear a summary on that.
So staff was in favor of maintaining 80% in order to set the character for the area, because it will be visible from 288. Again, with Alan's statement, I think we concentrated more on the material than the percentage, as I don't have any comments that I've written on percentage-wise.
Alan, is that material, the 50%, that goes back to that?
So the fiber cement panel,
Yeah.
in the definition of the
look.
PD, qualifies as masonry. So if it was 50%, that side of the building could be 50% brick, stone, masonry, fiber cement panel. The other 50% could be some other material, and I don't know what materials you use, but that's what it could be.
I think your proposed definition of masonry includes glass, which I thought was a little bit.
I think it's glass block. We don't
Okay, well, I apologize because I was confused when I saw glass included in the definition of masonry, and I was trying to figure out what would not be included in your definition and what is. But again, I don't pretend to be a
wood siding.
Yeah, oftentimes glass is counted just because there's windows, and so you don't want the area of the windows to count against you when you're doing the percentages.
And we don't have a problem with the glass being counted as part of masonry. So
If the glass is going to be counted as part of the masonry, I'd stick with staff's recommendation.
yeah, we don't have a problem with that, with the glass being counted as masonry.
You're counting glass as part of the masonry.
Right.
Not glass block, just glass.
Just glass.
I'm okay with it.
I would like staff's recommendation at 80%.
I think to move this along, I'd be with staff's recommendation at 80%.
Okay.
I agree.
So with that being said, I think what we have is we have currently a motion to approve and a second on the table. We have some things that you want done. Would this be a motion to amend that approval to address these 6 things as identified in the list provided by Martin Griggs, the I forgot your title, the Assistant Director of Community Development?
Yes.
So that would be a motion to amend. So moved.
Motion to amend the
I would,
motion, the original motion.
motion to amend the original motion to include the 6 proposals by staff that were read aloud by Martin Griggs.
Second. Oh, I can't.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, you could second, Mr.
Commissioner Hendricks, I approve.
Did we get that right? Probably not.
I think I have Commissioner Boswell making the motion, although normally the chair wouldn't make the motion. Okay, so then Mr. Earls is the one who said so moved after she got that, and then Commissioner Hendricks is the second, and now we can vote on the amendment.
All those in favor of the amended motion, please signify by raising your right hands. All those opposed? Passes 4-0.
So we have an amended motion, and now we're voting on the final motion, which is that amended motion.
All those in favor of the final amended motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Passes 4-0.
And that would resolve the issue, and assuming that you have a chair who's still outside or a vice chair who's still outside. Oh, they made it. What do you know? I mean, they stayed.
All right. We'll go quickly. Item 7, real quick. Everybody, thank you very much. Thank you. Y'all have a nice evening. Great job. Item number 7, discussion items, commissioners' activity report. Anybody have anything they would like to discuss? All right. Next
So-
P&Z regular meeting, October 17th, 20. Martin Griggs.
Next Monday at the city council meeting, just before the city council meeting starts, there will be a proclamation for National Community Planning Month, which is the month of October. So we would invite y'all all to come and participate and take a lovely picture. And
is that before or after the meeting?
Before the meeting
Before the
starts.
meeting, yes. So that would be about 5:30? Ish?
6.
It's going to be about 6. I will send out an invite to everybody tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
More or less just wanted to get it out in front of y'all right now.
We appreciate it. All right. Next P&Z regular board meeting is scheduled for October 17th, 2022. Does anyone know if they will be unable to attend at this time? Okay, one. Sure. All right. Hearing nothing else, motion for adjourn? Yeah, adjourn. I'm motioning myself.
What time do you have?
I've got 9/11. Thank y'all.